I've had my eye on getting an e-ink tablet for quite some time now. As an author, I really loved the idea of having a digital device that replicated a lot of the feel and aesthetic of writing by hand, but merged that with some of the conveniences of digital software and management and files and all that other kind of stuff. So I've had my eye on various e-ink devices for a while and have been doing a lot of reading and research, and when Amazon put the Kindle Scribe on sale a few weeks ago, I decided to take the plunge and give it a try. So I got my brand new Kindle Scribe actually for my birthday about 3 weeks ago, and I've been using it ever since, so I thought now was a perfect time for me to do an in-depth review and discussion of the Kindle Scribe, talk through some of its features, some of the things I really like about it, some of the things that I wish they would improve or hope they would improve, and give you a little bit of a sense of whether or not the Scribe might be a good e-ink device for you. So let's get into it. So let me start by talking about my use case, which I think is critical. The thing that I have discovered in researching e-ink tablets is there is no one perfect best tablet, even like for the money. All tablets, all e-ink devices have things they're good at and things that they are not good at, pros and cons, and you're going to be making some trade-offs. So I think it's really important if you're considering buying an e-ink tablet to be clear about what is important to you and how you plan to use it. So for me, some of the things that I knew going into getting my tablet, first off, I love writing by hand. So the handwriting feel and functionality was really important. I have carried a notebook with me pretty much my entire life, certainly my entire adult life. I always have one with me, and I've often felt frustrated by some of the limitations of that. Primarily, you write in a notebook and then whatever you wrote is just buried within pages, and it can be hard to find what you wrote down. Certainly it can be very difficult to access it because you pretty much just have to either type it up again. I know, I've looked into various like scanning softwares. Like I have an app on my phone that I have used when I know I have like several pages of really important things that I wrote that I need to offload and convert to digital, and it works well enough, but it's cumbersome enough that I tend to forget about it. And realistically, the notebook has been the space for me to offload some thoughts out of my brain. And mostly I use a notebook because I love to write by hand, but it has not been very efficient or convenient. So even though I have it with me, a lot of times when I have a thought for my book or for the work that I do, I'll often would end up emailing it to myself off of my phone because it was the most convenient solution I had to hand, which is very inefficient and wasn't ideal. So one thing I knew that I wanted from an e-ink device was to be able to handwrite a lot, to carry it with me all the time, to take lots of notes in lots of different notebooks because our life is a little complicated. I have lots of different books series, not just one series, but several series that I'm working on. I have the nonfiction work that I do for YouTube and our courses on Skillshare. I have the work that we do professionally for digital freelance work and so on. So I have lots of different kind of buckets, and I wanted something that would allow me to navigate between them, keep track of my thoughts and my writing of the things that I need to write down and keep track of along the way. Another big thing that I knew I wanted was to be able to write and think non-linearly, which is one of the things I like the most about paper. And what I mean by that is when you're typing on a digital device, you tend to work like top to bottom and it's kind of linear or chronological. So you sort of need to know the order that you're going to put your thoughts in as you're putting them down. But one of the things I love about writing by hand is you could write something up here and then something over here and something over here and draw lines between them and kind of work more three-dimensional, which especially for brainstorming is just how my brain operates, so I wanted something that would support that way of thinking. Another big use case that I was tracking is that I'm really committed to reading more in this period of my life. Our youngest child just started preschool this year, and that has finally reopened up a little bit more space in my day than I have had for the last 5 or 6 years. So one of the things that I really have wanted to do is get back into regular reading, both reading fiction for fun and reading nonfiction for personal growth and development. So I knew that I wanted my tablet to also function as my comfortable long session e-reader. I still do read on my phone for short bursts and really like maximally convenient, I'm standing in line at the grocery store and I have 5 minutes types of windows, but I wanted something that would also function well as an e-reader and not only as a note-taking device. And the last aspect of my use case that I thought was pretty important is that I needed to be able to output my notes in at least some fashion. I can't just have everything live on the device because then I'm sort of still stuck where my paper notebook left me, which is that I would get good notes down or think of a great thought or do some brainstorming or outlining for the book that I'm working on. But then when I need to access what I wrote, you know, it's on the device and you have to pull it up and look at it and find some way to transfer it to a computer or wherever you're doing your work. So I knew that I wanted to make sure my e-ink device supported that function and allowed me to export my notes in some way, which is a good segue into talking about some of the updates that Amazon has made to the Scribe, because that was one of the big eliminating factors for it originally, is that the Scribe did not ship out the gate with the ability to translate your handwritten notes into text in any way. And that was one of my kind of deal breakers initially, but they've added that as a feature. In the most recent update, you can now email yourself your files, and in that process you can translate your handwriting into text. Now, it's not as efficient as something like the Supernote, where handwriting to text conversion is just happening in the background automatically, but it works. I tested it, it works great, and it works well enough for the function that I need it to perform. I would like for it to be a tiny bit more convenient, but it works well enough. The other big things that they added in their updates are multiple pen types, a fountain pen, marker, and different pen thicknesses that you can choose, which is nice. I will be honest, I like the fountain pen because it writes pretty, and I enjoy that. I like using it to like title my pages and stuff. It's not essential, but it's nice. I don't draw, so the different pen types and pencil types aren't really a big deal to me, but it is nice that they added it, and it does, you know, add some extra functionality. They also added a lasso selection tool, and that was huge for me. I use it all the time because it allows you to just draw a selection box around any piece of text that you've written anywhere on the page. Once you've done that, you can cut and copy and paste it to another page, or you can move it around on the page to change the location. And that gets back to the working and thinking non-linearly component that was important to me. It has been so helpful to be able to just madly scribble whatever I'm thinking about and then use the lasso tool to pick and select and organize my thoughts right there on the page. It's one of the ways that makes it feel like better than a paper notebook, because you can't do that easily on paper, and you can do it very easily here, and I really like that. So those various updates were definitely things in the pro column, which when I revisited the Scribe, when I was considering buying it because of the sale, those were some of the first things that stood out to me. Now that I've had a chance to use it for a few weeks, let me start by talking through some of the other pros and the things that I really like about the Scribe. So I think the very first pro I should name, because it was one of the big factors that pushed me to go ahead and give it a shot, was price. I actually got the Scribe with the premium pen and the folio for under $300, which is a great deal and is close to half the price of comparable options like the Supernote or the Remarkable. By the time you add in a quality folio and a good pen, those were pushing above $500 a piece. So, you know, if money is really not an issue for you, you can sort of eliminate that one. But for me, it certainly was, and I think for many of us, it is definitely a factor, especially when you're considering a very specific device like this that does a set of things. It's not a laptop that you can justify spending a little more on because it does so many different things. It is an e-reader and a note-taking device, and to a degree, it's a luxury item because I can get a paper notebook for $15. So the price factor and how cheap I was able to get the Scribe was definitely a big item in the pro column when comparing to some of the other devices, which do have features that I would really like, but definitely I don't feel like those features are worth twice as much as I spent for this. Another big pro that I noticed immediately when I started using it is I love the feeling of writing on it. I was not sure how that was gonna go. Like I said, I really enjoy handwriting, and there's something about the tactile aspect of it, and for me, because I do it so much, it definitely helps trigger my brain in certain ways, and certain types of thinking goes better when I'm writing by hand than trying to type. And I was worried that a digital device wouldn't be able to replicate that, but for me, it definitely does, and in some ways, I almost like it more. The weight in the pen is really, really nice. It's balanced really, really well. And then you can kind of almost hear when you write. It has that kind of papery sound and feel to it. The premium pen has an eraser on the back, and it just works and it clicks. It's one of those things that's very subjective, so I can't necessarily guarantee that you will feel the same, but for me, the physical experience of writing in the Scribe feels lovely, and I really enjoy it. Also, on the reading side, because it's a Kindle device, it's one of the best e-readers you can get. I have lived in the Kindle ecosystem primarily, so I have a lot of books in the Kindle app already. So, 3 clicks on the way in, I logged in and linked, and all of a sudden, boom, there's all my books, and I could go through and just start downloading. I got the mid-sized option with 32 gigs of space on here, which, given how small e-reader files tend to be, feels like an infinity of space. So I was able to go through and just quickly download a ton of my books. And one of the things that I did like about the Scribe is that the screen is 300 dpi, which is a higher resolution than a lot of the other e-readers. And again, subjective, but I personally feel like I can notice the difference when I'm reading. The reading is more comfortable for my eyes, the screen is nice and big, and I've just really enjoyed the reading experience. And even just in the past 2 to 3 weeks, I've been reading a lot more. The backlight with the different lighting options for warm light has been wonderful, and it is a feature that devices like the Supernote don't have. So that was a big plus for me, because a lot of my reading I do later in the evening. I tend to stay up later than my wife, so I will kind of wind down my day with 30 minutes or an hour of reading before I go to bed, and being able to just have this and not need an external light has been fantastic. Another component, again, very subjective, but I really enjoy the look and feel of the Scribe. You'll notice, especially when it's out of the folio, it's very light. It's very thin, and it's not, it's fancy. There's no particular frills, but I just think it's very sleek, and it's the kind of, I don't know if it's aluminum or whatever, the metal of the case, and the kind of the bevel around the side. It's nice. Again, these are little things, but it's nice that it's just slightly raised, but it's not raised too high. So when you're resting your hand on it, which you do all the time, or sliding your hand on it because you're writing, it's not irritating. It doesn't like cut into your palm at all. And yeah, just the overall construction of it, look and feel of it. I will get to the case when I talk about cons, but overall, it's been fine. The device itself, I really, really like the look and feel of it. And finally, I'll talk about battery life. The battery life on this thing is incredible. I charged it to 100% the day that I got it, and I didn't plug it in for over 2 weeks. And by the time I did charge it, it was only done to about 17%. And that's after using it pretty much all day, every day. I have used it constantly. The only thing I haven't really used it for is like a super marathon reading session of, let's say, maybe 5 or 6 hours at a time. But even that, I mean, I have had the screen on a lot. I haven't been particularly careful about switching it into sleep mode on and off when I'm not using it. I just kind of have used it, and I wanted to see how that would go, and the battery life on it has been fantastic. So I love that. I do a fair amount of traveling, so knowing that I can kind of charge it up before a trip and bring the charger with me, but even if I have a long travel day, or if I'm out of my hotel room for a long time at meetings, I don't have to worry about the battery at all, and that has been great. So that's a reasonably long list of pros, and you can probably tell by now that I actually really like the Scribe. I'm surprised by how much I have used it, and more importantly, how much I've wanted to use it. It's not just because it's a new device and so I feel obligated to use it and I'm thinking about it. I have gotten completely attached to this thing. I carry it with me everywhere I go, and I use it constantly throughout the day, and I like using it, and I look forward to using it, which is, again, subjective, but a really big deal for me. But it's not perfect, so let's talk about some of the cons. The first one, which I alluded to before, is some aspects of the folio itself, the case, are not my favorite. I don't mind the construction. Like, I kind of like the sort of fabric-y feel of it, and it's not particularly heavy. It doesn't add a ton of weight, which is good. I don't love the flipping up vertical, primarily because I actually wouldn't mind it, except the way that the Scribe attaches into it is just a set of kind of magnets, but you'll see it has these kind of like indents where the nubs go, and you just kind of, you set it in there and slide it until it sort of pops in. And it holds well enough, but not well enough that I feel totally confident. Like this is fine, but if I shake it, it comes right loose. So it leaves me feeling just a little insecure about having it in the case. I wish it held on a little bit better. And because the magnets are here, again, getting nitpicky, but this is a review. When it's open and when you're ready to flip it back shut, you kind of have to like peel the magnet loose. And there's been multiple times where the way that I do that kind of pops the Scribe out of the thing, and then if I'm sitting at a desk, it's like, oh, it slides, and I don't know, it's just a slight barrier of irritation, but because it's part of the use experience, it's one that you experience like every time you're using it. I do like that it puts it into sleep mode when you close the case, which is nice. And also I like, it took me a bit to get used to it, but the way that the back folds, there's a sort of like magnetic section across here, so you can flip it and fold it like this, which then when you're ready to set it on the desk, gives you like a slightly inclined surface for writing on, which can be handy. Or you can flip it and hold it up that way, and if you are reading and you just want it vertical. So for the, $15, I got a used one for like the $15 I spent on it. I'm happy enough with it, but I will be doing some research, and I'm considering getting a slightly higher quality folio, maybe one that flips open. I would actually like to get a folio that maybe has some slots for cards, or maybe a physical pen or some scraps of paper, or stick a business card in for when I'm traveling. But I would personally, at this point, I would put the folio just on the slightly con side of things. It's not the worst ever, but it's not my favorite thing about it. So now let's talk about some of the cons of the Scribe itself, because the folio is optional. You don't even have to get one. You should definitely get something that's going to cover it and protect it, but you have options for what you do with that. But what comes baked onto the device is what it is. And my cons really are more of a wish list of features that I would like to see added. At this point, I've used it enough to feel comfortable that there's nothing about the note-taking and reading functionality that is such a problem that impacts my ability to use it the way that I want to use it. But there are some things that either I wish it could do, or that the way that it does it is just a little bit cumbersome and adds a little bit of friction to the experience of at least the way I use it that I wish it didn't have. So let's talk about those. The big first one that I wish that it had was better and easier notebook navigation. Because of the way that notebooks work, when you want to, if you're in a notebook, so if I want to go to a different notebook, I have to actually drop down from the top, switch back to my main notebooks, and then if it's in a different folder, I have to go back multiple menus back to finally get to the folder that I want to be in. And then you can go into that folder, and then if I have subfolders, so hopping back and forth between notebooks is very cumbersome and time consuming. I wish that it had kind of not a table of contents, but like a recently accessed notebooks maybe feature, where when you're in a notebook, then up here where some of the options are, I wish like you can pull this up and you see the pages within your notebook, but I wish there was a similar icon that would open up like recently accessed notebooks, like maybe the 5 most recent ones, or even just the 1 most recent one, because then at least if I was working between 2 different thought lines or 2 different notebooks, I could hop back and forth between them without having to click back out and click back in. And the same thing is true for books. This is one of the other big cons that I wish they would add a better functionality, because the e-reader is great and the Notes app is functional and getting better, but they don't play nicely with each other. If you're in the e-reader and you're reading a book, you can highlight, you can use all the normal Kindle features, and you can drop a note card in the book anywhere on the page, and you can handwrite on that, and then when you're looking in your book, you can see a list of all the note cards, but that's sort of contained within the book itself. If you want to go and write in one of your notebooks, again, you have to navigate back to the main Kindle library and then go on the main screen from your library over to notebooks, and then you can pull up, from there at least you can pull up the most recent notebook you were using. I love to take notes when I'm reading, especially when I'm reading nonfiction, so I'm constantly hopping back and forth, and it's so much so that there have been times where I will actually read on my phone and have the notebook up on my Scribe because I'm going back, I'm writing so many notes and it's just too obnoxious to switch back and forth. And I wish, my dream scenario would be for them to add because you can do actually split screen now. They added that for reading, which is wonderful because it feels like you're reading a book. Since they have the split screen functionality already added, I wish they would include the option to be able to have the Kindle app open on one part of your split screen and then a notebook open on the other part of your split screen, so that while you're reading, you can also be note-taking and annotating and whatever you want to do. Doesn't do that. So switching back and forth between the books and the notebooks is obnoxious to the point of being not that functional, depending on how much you're note-taking while you're reading. And that's something I wish that they would work on. Another con would be overall searchability and interaction between your various notebooks and folders. I wish they would replicate some of what the Supernote does with hyperlinks and being able to sort of build a table of contents and using search. I understand that because it's not doing handwriting to text automatically, I get search would be difficult, but already even after just a couple of weeks of using it, I have to kind of keep a pretty clear mental picture and be very organized about where I put things so that I can find stuff again. Let's say I'm working on notes for a character profile for a book I'm working on. I would love to be able to, for example, put do a little hyperlink of text over to a different notebook where I had taken notes on key items to include in a character profile while I was reading a book about how to write great characters, or doing my own brainstorming about that, and be able to like hop back and forth more easily between notebooks, which again, you can't do. Another feature that I really wish they had, this one is also frustrating, is the ability to have different page templates within a single notebook. Right now, when you have a notebook, it is nice that they have included a lot of different template options for types of page backgrounds. So you can do lined, you can do graph, you can do blank, you can do grid, you can do some things like a task list with checkboxes or times, and they're actually quite nice. I like the range of options that they have added, and you can change it after the fact, so you're not stuck with it once you pick one for your notebook, but whatever you pick applies to all the pages in your notebook, and I would love to be able to select a template per page instead of per notebook, so that maybe I use a blank page for the very first page, which is my big brainstorm page, and then the next page is lined because I'm making a list, and then so on and so forth, so that you can really customize what you want to do in your notebook, and right now you can't do that, and that sometimes has been frustrating. It's not the end of the world, but it certainly is a feature that I hope they will add in the future. I will say one balancing factor of that con is that you can use the Send to Kindle feature to sideload PDFs into your e-reader on your Scribe, and with a PDF, you can freely write all over it however you want and use the handwriting feature freely. So you can create a custom PDF, or if you buy like a digital planner or anything like that, you can load your PDF directly on here, and then that is a way that you can have individually customized pages within a single document, but it's not in the Notes app. So I would like to see them add that for the Notes app. I have used that feature and I'm quite happy with it as a revision tool. So if you're an author like me, I have loaded the most recent book that I'm working on of my own of revising, and it has been wonderful to get to read, just like printing out a copy for yourself, and use highlighter and mark notes and drop pinned cards and mark it up, and it's been great. It's actually really helped my revision process, and I've been enjoying working on revision on this and just a PDF that I shipped onto the device, and it's worked great for that. So with those pros and cons out of the way, let's talk a little bit about my summary thoughts and wrap this thing up. Should you buy a Kindle Scribe? Well, I think it depends, like I said, a lot on your use case. If you know for sure that you're going to primarily want an e-ink device for lots and lots of writing, and that's mostly what you want to do with it, then you might want to consider the Remarkable or the Supernote A5X or some of the other devices that are really specifically tailored for handwriting and have better features for sorting, organizing, and interacting with your notebooks. If you know for sure that you want a device that moves a little bit more into the iPad direction and has the functionality of loading Android apps, then you're looking at the Books series. You're going to pay more for them, but you can get a device that has a color screen. You can get a device that will allow you to load a whole bunch of different apps and functionalities. So if you know you want to use your device a little bit more as a multi-platform workspace, then you're probably looking more in that direction. But if you, like me, want a device that sits really nicely in the middle between a really great e-reader and a very capable digital e-ink note-taking device, then yes, I think the Scribe is a great deal. I think the price makes it a really good entry point to the e-ink marketplace as a whole, and so far I'm extremely happy with it. I'm definitely not planning to return it. I use it all the time, and I certainly don't regret it as a purchase, but I think it helps that I was very clear as I went into buying it what I needed it to do and what I was okay with cutting some corners on. So hopefully this review helps you. If it did, please leave a like on the video or comment. Let me know what you think. Have you used the Scribe? Do you have one? If so, do you agree with my assessment? Do you disagree? I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. If you use a different device, maybe give me your take on that in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the Story Castle channel for more deep dives and discussions of writing craft and your favorite books, movies, and series every week.